I'm going to now cover another argument. It's also by a famous philosopher, René Descartes. Descartes was a French philosopher who was born in 1595 and died in 1650. He invented analytic geometry, among other things. A very all-round brilliant fellow, a contribution to mathematics and to philosophy. And he thought that his main contribution was his defense of the existence of God. And I'm now going to erase Thomas' argument and put Descartes' argument in its place. So a bit of housekeeping. I spent some time with the principle of sufficient reason because Descartes' argument is going to assume that as well. Descartes' argument will be shorter, a little punchier, and Descartes' argument is going to prove not only that God exists and is self-existent, but Descartes' argument is going to try to show us God's character. It includes that God is all good and all just and all merciful, things of that nature. Okay, Descartes now is going to start with the principle of sufficient reason. For everything, there must be a cause or explanation. You know what that means by now and why it's important. Now he adds something else. Causes are always equal to or greater than their effects. Descartes is thinking here of the way causal chains exhibit themselves in reality, in the world around us, and to the investigation of the sciences. And it strikes him that in every case, there's more reality in the cause than in the effect that it produces. If you had a cause and it produced more, something had more reality in it than itself, it would violate the principle of sufficient reason. The more would have no cause or explanation. And that's his reason for thinking that this second premise is true. He thinks this is true if this is. And this is a necessary truth that everybody accepts and everybody can't get away from confronting and using. So that's the reason for premise 2. A cause, and he means the sum total of all the causes it takes to produce an effect, have more reality in them than the effect. Otherwise, you would get effects that didn't have a cause or explanation. Premise 3. There exists, in my mind, the idea of infinity. This is not supposed to be a necessary truth, it's simply a factual report. I am thinking of something infinite. Now, by this, Descartes does not mean spatially or numerically infinite. He means infinitely perfect. The term infinity then means that something has every perfection there is, and only perfections. A perfection is any characteristic that makes something better or greater to have it than to lack it. And the perfection is the infinite mode of anything like that. So goodness and knowledge and wisdom and mercy and power would all be perfections, and there may be an infinite number of them. He doesn't say my idea of infinity includes all the perfections I know about. No, it's all that there are, whether I know about them or not. I'm thinking of something having all and only perfections. So whatever that is, if such a thing exists, it would have all those perfections I just named and more. Of course, that's just an idea in his mind. It exists in my mind. But, he then argues, this idea, as it exists in my mind, an idea of something infinite with every perfection there is, could not have been caused by my mind. Why not? Because causes are always equal to or greater than their effects. Now, nothing can be greater than infinity, but it could be equal to it. But Descartes says my mind isn't infinite. It isn't equal to that idea. Neither is anything that I know. Nothing that we can observe has all perfections and is infinitely perfect. So what is the cause of the idea in my mind? It can't be the world around me. That's not the cause of me having that idea, because nothing in the world has any perfection, let alone all of them. And it can't be my mind, because my mind isn't infinite. It isn't up to the task. So therefore, there exists something infinite, which is the cause of my idea of infinity. I have an idea that couldn't be caused by me or anything I experience. The only thing that could have caused it is something infinite. So there is something infinite. If I have the idea, there must be an infinite thing to have caused it. He's not saying that's true of everything. He's not saying if I have the idea of Pegasus, the winged horse that flies through the sky, therefore there must be such a thing. No, he knows there are plenty of things that we imagine and think up that aren't in fact real. And the fact that we can think of something doesn't make it real in most cases, but in this case it does. Because what it is I'm thinking of is something infinite. And that idea would require an infinite cause. So I have an idea of something with all and only perfections. So there must exist something with all and only perfections to be the cause of that idea. How do you like that one? I said to you, Descartes' proof tries to get in it not only that God has infinite existence, is self-existent, but other characteristics, goodness, mercy, love, justice, power, knowledge, wisdom, whatever's a perfection, God has it. And now you've got it. So, what do you think of this one? I'd like to hear your feedback, but I can't. But let me tell you briefly why I think that this does not succeed either. And it's not the principle of sufficient reason. Let's grant him that, just for the sake of the argument. Some philosophers would accept this and some don't. But the real problem here isn't with the principle of sufficient reason. It's with what is called in logic equivocation. That means in your argument, without meaning to them, without noticing it, you have shifted the meaning of an important term so that it means one thing in the premise and something else in the conclusion. And that's what's going on here. There exists in my mind the idea of infinity, the idea of it. But the idea of infinity is not itself infinite. The idea that there may be something having every perfection, that idea doesn't have every perfection. It's the idea of something having every perfection. Therefore, the idea doesn't require an infinite cause at all, because it's not infinite. His idea isn't perfectly wise and just and all-powerful. It's an idea that there might be something like that. So his idea of infinity is not itself infinite and doesn't require an infinite cause. I think this flaw in the argument, which is fatal to it, was pointed out only after Descartes died, so he didn't get a chance to reply to this. I think if someone had pointed this out to him, he would have quietly withdrawn it. He had a couple of others that he offered during his lifetime, and he would have said, well, I think these work, let's forget about this one, because it very clearly does not work. This is an example, as I said earlier, of what most philosophy of religion courses do, and do little else. Most of them examine one proof after another, or one proof that God doesn't exist after another, and then they try to evaluate them in a logical manner, and they think that they've done a good job philosophically. And my criticism is that the proofs do not succeed, none of them, and that's not where our most intense focus ought to be. It ought to be on religious experience, which is how people really know that there's God, that God exists. Okay, when we reconvene for our next session, what I will be taking up is one last argument in favor of belief in God, and this will be a different sort of argument. It will be a probability argument. Instead of concluding with God, it will conclude something about belief in God. So the argument will shift from God himself being proven to the belief in God being shown to be more likely, more probably true than false. That'll be a treat itself, won't it? We'll hear that one. A lot of people still are very much in favor of this argument. So we'll take that up when we reconvene. You now need a break to think about all this.